And welcome! You're here in Manifesting Your Dreams with Pablo Miguel from Las Vegas. It's a beautiful day today, a little warm, but if you're visiting us for the first time, we've been doing this every week where the goal is to go over this book, Think and Grow Rich. If you ever read this book, you know what we're talking about. If you haven't, this is a book that not only you want to have, you probably want to gift it if you have your son, your daughter, your grandkids. And the idea is to go over a chapter of the book every single week. Napoleon Hill discovered 17 principles that all successful people have in common. So this week we're covering imagination, okay? Imagination. And we're very excited because we have a very unusual guest with us today. And actually I met Kim Simsby 24 years ago on the launch of a TV network that it was actually very coincidentally related to personal development. And this was before the people used to have the dishes in their homes and so forth. And as the world turns around, he lives in beautiful Carlsbad with his family. He's visiting Las Vegas for a concert. And I'm so excited that he actually could set up the time to be with us here today and share some of his experience. Because if there's one person that I really know that have lived these principles and have manifested his dreams, that is Kim Simsby from Denmark. So Kim, welcome to our show. Thank you so much for taking the time and being with us today. And I know you have a lot of value to provide to our audience. So why don't you take just a couple of minutes and tell us a little bit about yourself, your background, so they get to know you a little better.
Sure. Well, thank you, Pablo. And yeah, I'm excited to be here. You're absolutely correct. You know, it's I'm kind of smiling a little bit when I'm looking at this book because your version of it almost looks as used as mine. And the reason I say almost, when I first learned of Think and Grow Rich, as you said, I'm actually originally born and raised in Copenhagen, Denmark. I moved to the U.S. in the mid-1980s at a ripe old age of 25 years old. And I'd never been exposed to any of this sort of information before. But, you know, through a bunch of coincidences or whatever, I ended up being introduced to Think and Grow Rich. And as a matter of fact, also the Laws of Success, which is the leather-bound book that this is more of a summary of.
Exactly,
right?
exactly.
That goes through all the lessons and all that.
And that's a little bit.
Yeah, and you're correct. It's had a huge impact on my life in many different ways. And I remember in my younger days, I was so passionate about this that when I used to do trainings, I've been around the direct marketing industry most of my time here in the U.S. Prior to that, I came out of the corporate world, worked in marketing and management with several Fortune 500 and Fortune 100 companies back in Europe. But I remember when I used to do trainings in the direct marketing industry, I would literally almost preach this book. To the point that one year for my birthday, two very good friends of mine, at that time, you know, we were all young kids, they had actually found the first edition from 1937 at a garage sale. They bought it for 50 cents. Can you believe that?
No way.
And they gave that to me for my birthday.
Oh my God, that's amazing.
Yeah, it's been a big part of my life for, you know, a lot of years now. And I know one of the things that you and I talked about was the power of imagination, the power of visualizing, of having your goals, very concrete and specific goals, and writing.
Exactly.
And that's been pretty amazing for me throughout the years. And I remember a couple of things, you know, just to give you some specifics.
Absolutely.
As I was learning all the things in Think and Grow Rich, I was sitting at a seminar where the speaker, the trainer, was basically teaching people, you know, how to set goals and the importance of it and what have you, right? And I think a lot of times people, they hear the importance of it, but they don't do it.
Exactly.
Or maybe they've tried to do it a few times and it hadn't quite worked out the way they wanted to, so they give up on it.
Right.
But the fact of the matter is still, you know, we used to call it the 80-20 rule. 20% of people make 80% of the money. Nowadays, it's probably more like a 90-10 rule.
Isn't that amazing? That was actually changed.
If you look at the movement of wealth, right? The good news is you as an individual, you really have the power of choice. You decide whether you want to be the 10% making 90% of the wealth or the 90% making 10% of the wealth. And I'm not saying that having goals is the only thing that is required, but in my opinion, that's where it all starts. And a lot of times when I've done trainings and I ask people, quite bluntly, I just say, you know, this is obviously not the first time you're hearing this, right? People have read books, they've listened to
absolutely
the old days, cassette tapes, remember
cassette
that?
tapes, guys. I still have them, okay?
And then CDs, and now it's all downloads or whatever, right? So you've heard this many times before. And I asked them, I said, well, why are you not doing it? And they said, because if they don't reach their goal, then they feel like a failure.
Right.
And I'm like, well, let's address that for a minute, because the example that I like to use is the purpose of setting goals really lies not in achieving the goal. It is what it makes of you in the pursuit of it. You know, a lot of times that fancy car that you were dreaming about and you're so excited when you finally get to drive it home, 6 months later it's just another car. You know, you've had this dream house on the top of the hill for years and years and years, and you've been watching that since you were a teenager. You finally have your measure of success and you get to go buy your dream home. A year later, it's just another place to live.
Exactly.
Right? So those, and I know some people say, just get me to that point and I'll worry about the rest later.
Yeah. They deal with the consequences, right?
But it's really the journey itself that shapes the individual, and that's the power of goals. Another example that I like to use is, remember when we used to have the space shuttle program here in the U.S., and I understand they're going to start that up again. Did you know that when that rocket takes off from Earth on its way to the moon, that 97 some odd % of that journey, that spacecraft is actually off track.
97, wow.
It's constant plan, do, review. You know, it's interesting because I did this particular training at a live event in Massachusetts years ago. And we actually happen to have a rocket science in the audience. And I used to say it's over 90%, and he corrected me.
Oh,
and it's
yeah.
like 97, 98 or something like that, right? The point is that, or I guess the more important part of that whole statement is, well, what if they hadn't had a target to start with? We would have pretty much lost every space shuttle in history. Right?
Absolutely. Let's see. Hopefully it makes it, right?
And it's exactly the same with your business or your life or whatever it is that you're trying to improve on. If you don't know where you're going, every road is going to take you there. And that's exactly what's happening to the masses. And that's why so many people are running around like a rat in a wheel, because they don't have that force that's pulling them based on a goal, based on a dream, and that kind of thing, right?
Absolutely.
So I know I started out by saying I got a couple of specific examples.
We'll have a couple of more segments coming up, but it's so interesting. We have David Easterbrooks. Actually, if you haven't seen his interview, you want to go back. David Easterbrooks, and we cover definiteness of purpose with him, right?
Yeah.
And the reason he was able to build such a successful and a large business, actually working with you, were so many other people that started at the same time that he did, right? Over the same period of time did it. And that's exactly what you're saying, is the ability to set up a very clearly defined goal. And whether it is failure or success, and I remember you told me this one time, I was having some issues, I was talking to you years ago, and you said to me, Pablo, that's a temporary, I was coming up with a big problem, right? Like, look at what happened to me, right? Like all of us go through, like, oh my God, I can't believe this just happened to me. And you corrected my word, and you say, Pablo, that's a temporary inconvenience, right? And I went like, no, this is a big F problem, right, in my head. But you said, that's a temporary inconvenience. And then I stopped on my tracks with amazement, because the way you define it, I said, you know what? Number one, this is an inconvenience, right? Although I wasn't calling it like that, but it's also temporary, right? And then I opened up my eyes, I said, it totally changed my energy, right? And if you label, like whether you are in sales or whether you're looking for, the partner for the rest of your life, or you want to educate your kids or whatever, and things don't go your way, you can reframe that into a learning experience, right? Into just the fact that you took action that was successful, because that's what most people don't do, right?
Right.
So it is amazing. I really admire how you use that power of vocabulary, right? And having a clear goal is where you have to start, and then go for it, right? And we'll go over in the next segments we're going to go over into some of your incredible stories as far as the things that you were able to manifest. And the other thing that you mentioned about people reading the book or having the book is like so many people say, I have that book. You know what that means when they say, I have that book? They haven't read it.
That's
right? Because they could have said, I read that book, but they say, oh, I have that book. It's like I have a collection of books, right? Or other people said, I read it, right? And this is a book, like, it's not just about reading it. It's not like a movie.
Absolutely.
So you go, oh, I saw that movie. This is something you actually get to experience.
It's actually out as a movie now. It
is. Well, I didn't even know that. Okay, you know what? I saw it like a trailer like a year ago.
Yeah.
So that actually came out already.
Yeah.
Oh wow! So we're gonna watch the movie, right? So we're a little bit out of time. So we're gonna come back in a minute or so. But if you'd like to stay in contact with us, go to www.manifestingyourdreams.net, N-E-T, manifestingyourdreams.net, and put your email there, and we're actually going to send you a PDF document with 5 key things you can do to start on the process of manifesting your dreams. If this is the first time that you're here, if you just join us, we're going to get back, and we have Kim Simsby here from Copenhagen. Congratulations on Denmark actually qualifying into the World Cup.
That's a big deal.
I qualified too. So this is a huge event, and we're so glad that you're visiting here with us from Carlsbad. So we're going to be right back. Don't go anywhere. Manifesting your dreams. We'll be right back.